Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to another edition of Happy Hour. As always, if you choose to drink or whatever you choose to do so responsibly. Also, anything that we mention here, if we don't specifically say it is a sponsor, it is not a sponsor at this moment. That could change, but it is not why we're talking about anything we're talking about. Samantha!
Yes.
Are you sipping on anything?
I am. I found, after finding a very, very good deal for sodas, which you know have been ridiculously expensive, to the point that I had to ask a soda salesperson. He was stocking up. I was like, excuse me, does this mean this? And he's like, yes. It got really exciting. He's like, and it means all of them. He showed off all the ones I could get. And I was like, wow. So with that, I bought myself a pineapple soda, which I have been thoroughly enjoying. That I only drink once every few days because I don't typically drink straight soda. I know I'm one of those people because, I am a millennial that learned from the boomer to love Diet Cokes. But I guess a geriatric millennial. Elder millennials. Gen X millennial. Anyway, so I'm drinking a pineapple soda and it's quite delicious.
Yeah, all right.
Very satisfying.
Yes. I like your koozie, by the
Thank
way.
you. Yes, I know. What about you?
I made a G&T, a gin and tonic.
Ooh.
I haven't had one in a very long time. I still have, only Samantha can see, my Galaxy gin. So that tells you how long it's been. Because that's a Star Wars-based gin that I make. Anyway, today I'm going to just issue a massive spoiler warning because I'm doing another horror movie update. It's been a while since we've done these. But there has been a glut of horror movies lately, Samantha.
There really
has. My gosh. And so I'm, living the best time. But I am going to spoil... I'm not going to go too in depth because these are not Feminist Movie Fridays, even though I feel like I could do an episode on each of these. But there will be spoilers for Late Night with the Devil, You'll Never Find Me, and The Royal Hotel, which, interestingly, all three of them are related to Australia, came out of Australia. What's going on, Australia? Write in and tell me.
They're in their horror phase.
They're in their, something, they're examining something. I love it. But let me know. Okay, so yes, all of these are very well reviewed, and I've been talking about them forever. My friends probably really annoyed because I kept being on this date, we have to do this. And they're like, what movie are you talking about again? So as this is a feminist show, I do, of course, have feminist thoughts about all of these. Let us start with Late Night with the Devil. This is kind of a 70s weird deal with the devil thing. There was some controversy around it because they used 3 images that were AI generated.
Okay. Yeah, I saw
that. But that is for a different podcast. I would say it's kind of like watching someone descend into madness. But once again, we do have the classic horror movie tropes of sacrificing a woman you supposedly love for success, whether that is on purpose or not, or it was a risk you were willing to take. That's up for debate, but still, she's the one that pays the price for this man's success. Then you have, because it's kind of a talk show, it's Halloween, he's trying to beat Johnny Carson in the ratings, so he brings on this woman who wrote a book about the lone survivor, this young girl, of this satanic cult ritual suicide. And he brings her on, but then, of course, he brings on the cynic, who is, of course, a man. And so she's sort of painted as the unscientific guest, even though it's clear she has way more expertise, at least in this case, than the dude has. And he keeps trying to prove her wrong. Then it comes out that the host of the show is also having sex with this guest, which also, a trope that comes up a lot. We have the creepy little girl. Classic. Always. You've got to have the creepy little girl. But as you know, one of the biggest things I took away from this is this deal with the devil. It's not ever like explicitly said, but it's pretty clear it happened at Bohemian Grove. And if you don't know what that is, it's like a very fancy, exclusive club that there's been a lot of conspiracy theories about and horror movies about. This is definitely not the first. But afterwards, I looked it up. Women can't join the Bohemian Grove.
Of course not.
And I was outraged, even though I'm like, this is a pretty shady club you probably don't want to be a part of.
Right.
but hey, I think there's like 4 honorary members who are women. And the thing is, this is another thing I would love to come back and do an episode on, because you also brought up the Masons, is that the women in question were like, you know, like it or not, you do make a lot of connections at these things. And they are places where these kind of big deals are made and women aren't allowed. There was also a big lawsuit with just having women working at it. So I didn't anticipate when I saw this horror movie to come out and be like, I have an idea for a Sminty episode. But gosh darn it, I do. Jeez, let women make deals with the devil and join your weird club.
Well, come on.
It's only fair.
You blame them for the devil, so why not?
Why not? Come on now. All right, so moving on. You'll Never Find Me. This is a horror movie that takes place in a trailer in Australia where there's this huge storm, and this old man who is in isolation hears this like knock on the door, and it's a young woman who doesn't have shoes on, who is like desperate to get a ride or get a phone call or something to get back to her hotel. But throughout, you're kind of questioning her and him and who's telling the truth and what's going on. So the reason I wanted to talk about this one is that it has a very interesting like main concept that I don't want to say it didn't work, because that's not true. But it's interesting to me that at the end I was like, yes, of course. But I think it was supposed to be more like, oh, we don't know. So you're supposed to believe that this man is haunted by his dead wife, which he is, sorta. And he kind of is like telling this meet cute gone wrong story, like, because it turns out, guess what? It's not his wife. It's a woman who just asked for help and he killed her. Right. But you're supposed to the whole time be like, who's telling the truth? And it's very much playing on the tropes of like, we're very suspicious of women, but less of these like old sad men who we believe have gone through tragedy. Like, oh, he lost his wife. What? Oh dear. She's being strange that she doesn't want to drink what he gives her. But to me, as a woman, I'm like, no, of course not.
We're good.
Like, no, I'm not going to drink that.
I'll just die of dehydration. Thank you.
And he's very like pushy in terms of like, he makes it sound in the very benign sexism, as it's called. Like, oh, you must be cold. Let me get you this. Or you must be hungry. Let me get you this. And she's like, no, I'm good. No, I'm good. No, I'm good. So to me, it was very like, I was not surprised when he was a killer at the end. But it was interesting to me that I think they were trying to be like, see, we're so suspicious of women, when she clearly was saying over and over, I just want the phone call. I just want the ride. Like, I don't, none of this. I'm good. Because he has this big speech at the end where he's like, wow, you women, you're always putting yourself in these dangerous situations, and then you're mad when bad things happen to you. And I'm like, she literally kept trying to say, just,
like trying to protect herself.
Right. And the storm was really, really bad. So I think you're like, at first you're supposed to believe she's suspicious because she's clearly lying about some stuff. But so is he. They have a whole game of like cards, bullshit, where they're like, I know you're lying. I know you're lying. And then it turns out she's a ghost. Yeah. Of the woman he was saying was his wife. But because he says he can never remember what their faces look like. Because they don't matter at all to him. So he doesn't recognize her face. And then he has this whole thing about like, yeah, people don't care or notice when women go missing. And then the woman has this whole like thing where she's like, I keep traveling and hoping for something different, but it's just a new scenery for my misery. And it does have this other thing that I thought was interesting with the difference between men and women playing with danger, because like to him, he has this thing where he's like, I almost died and now I want to kill women. Whereas her playing with danger is like, she's literally just trying to travel alone and trust people not to kill her. Like, whoa. She has so many opportunities to kill him and doesn't. Wow. Yeah. And so he's very much implying that it is her fault for needing help, for asking for help. He says, this is not a chance. This is a choice that you took. Then he's talking about how he's always waiting for sirens, but they never come. And he says, do you know what happens when I do exactly what I shouldn't? I get rewarded. And he says, you've knocked on the wrong door. And she kind of jokes like, wrong place, wrong time. But yeah, he's just like really guilting her into staying for so long. So everything he says, like when you get to the end, you're like, oh, yes. Yes, I thought you were bad. He's making it sound like she's the one that was being foolish.
Of course.
Yeah, but the kind of ending culminates in the women he has killed, which I believe there are 7 of them. He has this really nightmarish sequence, and then he comes out of it, and there's no storm, and he's like, oh, poof. But, hey, in his stupor, he accidentally drank all of that drug that he gave to all the women, and he dies. So
great.
They got there. In the end, the ghost or his delusions, whatever it is, they got him. So I thought that was really interesting that it hinged on a point that I'm curious, like men watching it, what they think. But for me as a woman, I was like, no, this guy is no good.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the last one, Royal Hotel, which is apparently like the #1 movie on Hulu right now. It has Hugo Weaving in it, but it follows 2 Canadian travelers in Australia who run out of money. They join like a work program that sends them into the middle of nowhere to work at this bar, the Royal Hotel. And they encounter like so much misogyny. They encounter so many like tropes of like the nice guy, so many things that's like, oh, he's just lonely, let him do this, let him talk to you like that. It's interesting because somebody had told me about it and I was like, oh, I definitely have to watch that. But they made it sound like the friends turned against each other more than I felt like they did. Like I wouldn't say they turned against each other, but one of them was way more concerned than the other one was. One of them was much more like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And
That's
maybe even a little flattered at the attention, whereas the other one was like, I don't feel safe, I think we should get out of here.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say they like turned against each other. They just were kind of not agreeing on the level of acceptable behavior.
Right.
And like who felt safe and who didn't. And one of them, the one who was more okay with it, was definitely getting plied with drinks a lot. So she was often drunk, and she was like, no, I'll go with this guy. And her friend very reasonably was like, no, you won't. That is not cool. But so, yeah, they're the generally left alone at this bar, very isolated. And there's a lot of like, kind of that flirting I know almost all of us are familiar with, where it's like, this is, you're cute, but you're kind of making me uncomfortable, but it gets worse and worse and worse. And then it eventually explodes into like literally saying things like, oh, you were mine. He promised me I could have you first. Like very ownership over women, wanting. It's interesting because the one who wants to leave is the one everybody's sort of going after at first, I think, because she doesn't want to be with them.
Yeah.
Which is the thing we see. But then They set the hotel on fire.
Of course.
And I have to like pour one out for the indigenous woman who kept trying to make the bar run and kept trying to like make sure they got paid, because they weren't getting paid either. Like they kept promising like, oh, you'll get paid. And they weren't. So the interesting thing about this too was, and I want to be 100% clear, I've had this experience in America, but when I was in Australia, a lot of this I did recognize. Like I remember they would have these nights where women would just drink free and would be drunk, and like men would be all around. And I had definitely multiple experiences with being touched very overtly that I did not want to be, and I didn't know how to get away from it. There was like these signals that you were supposed to use if you really wanted to get out of a situation, which to this day, I'm like, I don't know if that was really true, but that's what I was told. Listeners write in. There was a lot of stuff about the bar culture in this movie in Australia, and sort of this idea like you can't escape misogyny. And so while they're working at this bar, they heard a lot of comments that we hear all the time, like, wouldn't hurt you to smile a bit more. You're scaring everyone off.
Good.
Yeah, I know. And they're just like rude. And there's a very uncomfortable scene where one of the characters, dude, had like tried to sneak into their room at night. And they knew it was him. They scared him away because they were staying above the bar. And then there was a couple that was there celebrating their anniversary, and the guy came back to the bar and made it really uncomfortable for them and for the bartenders, where he's like, she's such a she won't help me with it, like all of this stuff. And they were like, she's just trying to do her job and we're just trying to like celebrate, and you won't let it go. So it was very uncomfortable. There's also the thing of isolation, which again, going back to my experience in Australia, incredibly isolated. Like some places the phone's not going to work, like nothing. And so there was that kind of added element of the horror of it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I said, they burn it down.
They burn it down.
They burn it
in
down.
the story.
In the story. So I would love to hear any people's thoughts about these movies, or if there are any other, we love a recommendation.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. So many horror movies right now. So many things. I'm like, oh, let me talk about this.
You watch the one about the kid? Is it Abigail or something like that?
Abigail, the ballerina dancer?
Yeah.
Vampire?
Yeah. Like it tells you immediately in the preview what's going to happen.
I know. I was a little like, oh.
Is there another twist? Like you just kind of completely opened that one up. Okay.
Yeah. Trailers these days, it's hard to say. Sometimes
That's
they're
true.
like, That's
is what it is.
the
Entire movie. Congratulations.
But, yeah. We'll see. There are a couple of other movies I'm interested in, but I think I'll wait for streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Immaculate I'm interested in, but I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it's a different take on religious horror. So
I heard that too, but then I heard people were really upset about it.
Yeah. Which I'm like, I don't know. So I'm going to wait for streaming.
So many things.
I know. But yes, if you want to add things to that, listeners, please let us know. You can email us at stephandiamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast, or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff One Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff One Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.